Have you ever stopped to think about how many times you've passed by the same place at the same time and seen the same people without really noticing? See them. That man sitting on the park bench. The van parked on the same corner 3 days in a row. The guy who's always there when you pick up your child from school, did you notice? Of course not, because everything seemed normal, routine, harmless. But what if I told you that, while you were going about your routine without a second thought, someone was recording your every move, every time, every distraction, every moment you let your guard down? Imagine the scene. It's a sunny afternoon. You're in a community park, one of those full of children running, laughing, playing on the slide. Your son is there, just a few meters away. You glance at your phone for a few seconds. A message, a notification, nothing out of the ordinary. But there, sitting on a bench for 3 consecutive afternoons, is a man. He doesn't look directly at your son. He doesn't need to. He's memorized everything. The blue backpack he uses, the light-up sneakers he loves, the way he runs to you when he wants to show you something. He knows your son's name because he heard you calling him. He knows the route you take home because he's followed it from afar. He knows when you get distracted because he timed it. And you didn't even notice that this man exists. He's become part of the landscape, invisible, but extremely present. This isn't the impulsive kidnapper we see in movies, the one who acts desperately, chaotically, driven by a sudden outburst. No, this is the pre-planned kidnapper, the most dangerous type, because he doesn't act on emotion. He acts strategically. He studies, he plans, he tests his hypotheses, and when he finally attacks, he already knows the victim better than their own family. He knows where the weaknesses are. He knows when no one will notice. He has turned surveillance into a weapon and patience into power. Today, you'll step inside the mind of someone capable of observing a child for weeks, mentally noting every detail, waiting for the exact moment to act. We'll dissect real cases where this happened. We'll understand the psychology behind this predatory behavior. And most importantly, we'll show you how to identify the signs before it's too late. Because the invisible predator relies on one thing, that you'll never truly see it. But after today, you'll know exactly what to look for. Before we delve deeper into this dark reality, tell me something. Have you ever been in a situation where you felt someone was watching you but ignored your instincts? Leave a comment, because these stories matter, and you never know who might be reading and recognizing a dangerous pattern. If this kind of content resonates with you, if you want to continue understanding how these distorted minds work so you can protect yourself, like this video and subscribe to the channel. Here, we don't romanticize criminals, we dissect them. And the more you understand, the less vulnerable you become. Okay? So let's go, because now I'm going to show you a real case that will make you rethink every person you see on the street. June 1991, California. A morning that seemed perfectly ordinary. J.C. Dugard, 11 years old, was on her way to school. Blonde hair, backpack on her back. That route she took so many times she knew it by heart. She walked alone for a few minutes, just a few minutes, between the bus stop and the school. Enough time to feel that sense of freedom that every child that age loves. But that morning, a gray car pulled up beside her. A man got out, and in a matter of seconds, J.C. was dragged into the vehicle. Muffled screams, panic, and then silence. She disappeared as if the earth had swallowed her. But here's what most people don't know. J.C. Dugard's kidnapping didn't begin that day. Philip Garrido, the man who took her, had spent weeks watching her. He knew her routine better than many adults know their own schedules. He knew what time she left home. He knew how many minutes she was alone. He had tested the route, timed it, mapped every corner, every possible witness. He mentally rehearsed the approach. He visualized her resistance. He planned how to subdue her. And when he finally acted, there was no hesitation. It was quick, precise, brutal. J.C. Dugard was held captive for 18 years. 18. You read that right. Hidden in the backyard of Garrido's house in a series of makeshift tents and structures he specifically set up to keep her prisoner. During that time, she was repeatedly abused. 2 children were born. Shared children who grew up in that horrific scenario, unaware that there was a world out there searching for their mother. J.C. was only found in 2009, when Garrido made a mistake and raised suspicions by showing up at a university with the 2 girls. Someone noticed something strange. Someone questioned it. And finally, after almost 2 decades, the truth came to light. But there's a detail here that needs to be very clear. This wasn't the work of an impulsive monster who saw an opportunity and acted without thinking. This was the work of someone who calculated every move, who transformed surveillance into a lethal weapon, who made patience a hunting tool. Garrido wasn't caught in the act because he had prepared everything down to the smallest detail. And the most frightening thing? He's not an exception. This methodology, this pattern of prolonged observation before the attack, appears in dozens of cases around the world. There are predators right now, at this very moment, studying their next victims, observing, taking notes, waiting. And to understand how to protect those you love, you need to understand what was going through Philip Garrido's mind during those weeks of surveillance. Now, for most normal people, the mere idea of observing a child for weeks with criminal intentions would be absolutely unbearable. Guilt would eat you up inside. Self-loathing would be paralyzing. The constant fear of being caught, of someone noticing, of ending up in prison, all of this would prevent any action. But in the mind of the prearranged kidnapper, something completely different is happening. It's as if their brain operates on a different frequency, where the moral alarms that function in most people simply don't exist or have been switched off long ago. First, what criminal law or psychologists call progressive dehumanization occurs. He doesn't see that child as a real person, with feelings, family, dreams, fears. He sees an object, a target, and the more he observes, the more the child becomes a thing abstract in his plans. She loses her human identity. She loses her name. She becomes just the girl with brown hair, or the one with the pink backpack, an item on a mental list, a piece on a chessboard that only exists in his sick mind. This process of transforming a human being into an object is fundamental for him to be able to move forward without hesitation, because it's much easier to hurt a thing than to hurt a person. Secondly, each day of surveillance feeds and reinforces his fantasy. He's not just observing, he's mentally rehearsing the crime. He imagines the kidnapping. He imagines the moment of the approach. He imagines the control he'll have. He imagines every detail of what he'll do afterward. And here's the crucial point. Every time he visualizes this, his brain releases dopamine, chemical pleasure, neurological reward. He's literally rewarding himself before to act. The vigilance itself becomes part of the ritual, part of the pleasure. It's not just logistical preparation, it's part of the emotional gratification. That's why he's in no hurry. That's why he can wait weeks, because the whole process is already feeding his unhealthy need. And third, the more time he spends observing unnoticed, the more desensitization to risk occurs. At first, he feels fear. What if someone notices? What if they think it's strange? What if they confront me? But after a week of returning to the same place, sitting on the same bench, observing without anyone questioning, the fear begins to diminish. Confidence grows. The feeling of invisibility empowers him. He begins to believe he is smarter than everyone around him, that people are blind, distracted, naive. And this belief fuels a sense of superiority that makes the attack increasingly likely. The more time he spends watching undetected, the more inevitable the crime becomes in his mind. It's like a snowball rolling down a mountain. The more it rolls, the bigger it gets. The faster it goes, the harder it is to stop. And when it reaches the bottom, the impact is devastating. But there's one detail that makes all this even more frightening. This type of predator doesn't choose just any child randomly. There's a very clear, almost methodical pattern behind the selection. And understanding this pattern can be the difference between recognizing a real danger and letting it go unnoticed. The first thing it looks for is perceived vulnerability. It identifies the child who walks alone, even if only for a few minutes. The one who takes a long time to be noticed as absent. The one who has a predictable routine, always at the same time, always in the same place. It looks for gaps in protection. And here's the disturbing detail. It doesn't seek invisibility share. He seeks invisibility, that the less a child is watched, the fewer adult eyes are paying attention, the more attractive they become as a target. That's why children from dysfunctional families, with absent or overburdened parents, end up being chosen more often. Not because the parent feels sorry for them or wants to help, but because they know that no one will notice the absence immediately. Then there's the issue of accessibility. He observes the environment with the eyes of a strategist. Parks without security cameras, streets without constant traffic, times of low visibility, like late afternoon when people are already tired, distracted, thinking about dinner. He maps escape routes. He tests how long it takes for someone to notice something wrong, how long it takes for someone to react. He thinks like a bank robber, planning every second, every variable, every possible obstacle. But the target isn't money. The target is a life, and that makes everything infinitely more cruel. He chooses locations where he knows he can act quickly and disappear before anyone understands what happened. And there is a third factor, perhaps the most disturbing of all: psychological projection. Sometimes the child physically resembles someone from his past, a sister, a schoolmate, someone who aroused confusing feelings in him when he was younger. Or perhaps she represents something he wants to control: innocence, purity, power over another human being. Or she simply activates in him a distorted mixture of desire, anger, envy, and a need for domination. He doesn't choose based on beauty in the conventional sense. He chooses based on inner meaning, on emotional triggers that only make sense within his diseased mental architecture. It could be the hair color, the way she walks, her laugh, something that triggers a distorted connection in his mind. And when he finally decides, the choice has already been made days ago. It's not an impulse. It's a conclusion. It's the end of a process that he nurtured, refined, and justified internally until reaching the point of execution. That's why it's so important to understand not only who he chooses, but as he chooses, because recognizing selection patterns can help you protect those you love. But there's something else that needs to be clear here. October 2007, Missouri. 11-year-old Sean Hornbeck left home for a bike ride on a quiet autumn afternoon. It was a common activity for him, a route he knew well, but he never returned. His bicycle was found abandoned by the side of the road. Sean had simply vanished. The entire community mobilized, posters plastered on every lamppost, organized searches, emotional appeals on television, but nothing, no sign of him. And as the months passed, hope dwindled, until everyone began to accept the worst. But Sean was alive, and he was just a few miles from where his family was desperately searching. He was at the home of Michael Devlin, the man who had spent weeks watching him before acting. Devlin knew Sean's bike route. He knew the times. He knew when he would be alone, away from witnesses. He had planned the approach like a military operation, every detail rehearsed, every variable considered. And when he finally attacked, it was too fast for Sean to react. One instant he was pedaling peacefully. The next, he was being dragged into a white pickup truck. Sean Hornbeck was held captive for over 4 years. 4 years living under Devlin's absolute control, suffering constant abuse, completely isolated from the world that was still searching for him. But there's something even worse in this story. During that time, Devlin kidnapped another child, 13-year-old Ben Ownby, and it was precisely this second kidnapping that gave him away. Because with Ben, he didn't follow the same protocol. He was careless, hasty. He acted without the same level of meticulous preparation he had used with Sean. Witnesses saw the pickup truck. They were able to identify details. The police tracked the vehicle, and when they raided Devlin's house, they found the two boys, Sean, whom everyone had considered dead for years, and Ben, who had been kidnapped just days before. And here's the absolutely shocking truth that needs to be etched into your mind. When Michael Devlin studied his victim for weeks, planning every move, he was almost never caught. He managed to keep Sean hidden for 4 years without raising suspicion. But when he acted impulsively with Ben, without the same preparation, he made mistakes that landed him straight in prison. This proves that prolonged surveillance isn't madness. It's not paranoia or erratic behavior of someone out of control. It's method, it's discipline, it's applied intelligence with destructive purpose. And that makes it infinitely more terrifying, because it means these predators are capable of logical reasoning, strategic planning, and emotional control. They aren't impulsive monsters acting in the heat of the moment. They are cold calculators who turn crime into science. And to combat this, you need to understand exactly what they do during this period of surveillance. So let's surgically dissect this mental process, as if you could enter the mind of a kidnapper planning an attack. And let me be very clear here. This isn't to glorify anyone. It's for you to recognize, because knowledge is the best defense there is. In the first week, the initial selection and recognition process takes place. He identifies potential targets. He goes to public parks near schools, bus stops, and community playgrounds. He observes from a distance without drawing attention. He mentally notes who is unaccompanied, who has a fixed and predictable routine. He is not looking for the prettiest or most charming child. He is looking for the most accessible, the one that offers the least risk, the one with the least protection around it. At this stage, he may be observing 10, 15 different children. He hasn't decided yet. He's just collecting data like someone doing market research. In the second week, he has already narrowed down the options and begins a detailed mapping of routines. He returns at the same times, to the same places. He confirms patterns of behavior. He discovers where the child lives, sometimes following from a distance, sometimes just observing which direction she takes. He maps the route she takes, whether she goes on foot or by bicycle, and how long it takes. He observes who accompanies her, or crucially, when he accompanies her. He's building a complete mental dossier. Names, schedules, vulnerabilities, opportunities, everything stored, processed, organized in his mind, like a living database. In the third week comes the invisibility test, and here things get bolder. He gets a little closer. He sits closer in the park. He parks the van in a position where he can observe better. Sometimes he even interacts, asks the child for the time, compliments their dog, offers help with something small. He's testing multiple variables. Does anyone notice his presence? Does the child tell anyone about the interaction? Does he raise suspicions among nearby adults? If no one reacts, if no one questions him, he gains confidence. The feeling of invisibility solidifies, and he advances to the next stage. In the fourth week, the complete mental rehearsal takes place. He visualizes the kidnapping from beginning to end, how he will approach the child, what he will say to gain trust or to paralyze her with surprise, where he will take her immediately afterward, how he will contain any physical resistance. He mentally rehearses every second of the crime, like an actor memorizing lines before a premiere, and the more he mentally rehearses, the more natural the act becomes. The easier it is to execute without hesitation. When he finally acts, it's not improvisation. It's the meticulous execution of a script he has already lived 1,000 times in his head. And that's precisely why most victims don't have time to react. But there's a question everyone asks when they hear these stories. The question that comes up most often is, how does nobody notice? How can a man spend weeks watching a child without anyone doing anything? And here's what's most frightening when you investigate these cases thoroughly. Most of the time, someone saw. Someone noticed the strange man. Someone felt that unease in their stomach, that feeling that something was wrong. But no, one acted. And this happens for 3 very specific psychological reasons that every experienced kidnapper knows and consciously exploits. First, there's what psychologists call the bystander effect. When there are several people in a public setting, each individual unconsciously dilutes their responsibility to act. The automatic reasoning is, if it were something really serious, someone else would have already done something. Everyone thinks someone will intervene, so nobody intervenes. It's like watching an accident on a crowded street. Everyone looks, but almost no one stops to help because they assume someone else will do it. The kidnapper relies precisely on this collective paralysis. He chooses environments where there are enough people for him to blend in, but not so isolated that a single person feels obligated to act. Secondly, the presence becomes normalized. And this is perhaps the most dangerous thing. After seeing the same person 3 or 4 times in the same place, the human brain stops registering them as a threat. They become part of the landscape, part of the expected scenery. The guy on the park bench, the man in the parked van, we get used to it. And getting used to it is extremely dangerous because it lowers our guard. Our brain evolved to conserve energy, so it quickly categorizes what is familiar as safe. The predator uses this to its advantage. It's intentionally familiar. It camouflages itself through repetition. And third, there's the social. Education against distrust. From a young age, we're taught not to judge people by their appearance, not to be paranoid, to give the benefit of the doubt. So, even when something seems strange, we suppress the instinct. We rationalize, oh, it must be someone's father waiting to pick up his son. He must be waiting for a friend. Maybe he just likes to sit here because it's quiet. We invent plausible excuses not to act, because acting would mean confronting someone, seeming rude, potentially feeling embarrassed if we're wrong. And the kidnapper recounts, exactly. With that, he knows that people will doubt their own instincts. He knows that modern social education has trained us not to trust intuitions that seem biased. and he uses all of that education against us like a silent weapon. But there are specific signs that you can learn to identify. So now let's talk about what really matters, what you need to know to protect yourself or to protect those you love, because recognizing a kidnapper in the surveillance phase can literally save a life. And the signs are there. You just need to know where to look. First, the visual cues. Pay attention. An adult alone, without children accompanying him, repeatedly frequenting places with children, parks, playgrounds, near schools outside of school hours. This alone doesn't prove anything, but it's a starting point. Prolonged and focused observation is another indicator, not that casual glance you give when passing by a place. It's fixed, attentive observation, like someone studying something. Presence at the same times, always. If you see the same man sitting on the same bench 3 afternoons in a row at the same time, that's not a coincidence. And subtle attempts at interaction with children, seemingly innocent questions, compliments on the dog, offers of help with something small. He's testing reactions, building familiarity. Then there are the behavioral signs that are even more revealing. He moves away when adults approach as if he wants to avoid being remembered or identified. He strategically changes position to maintain line of sight with the child he's watching. If the child goes to the other side of the park, he finds an excuse to reposition himself as well. He jots things down on his cell phone, takes discreet photos, pretends to be using his phone while actually recording information. And if someone confronts him, he always has a ready, well-rehearsed excuse. I'm waiting for my wife. Just resting a bit. I work nearby and I'll come for lunch. Responses that are too quick, too prepared. Now, what should you do if you notice these signs? First, trust your instincts. If something seems wrong, and wrong, your brain processes thousands of micro-signals that you don't even consciously perceive. That feeling of unease exists for a reason. Second, document. Take a discrete photo of the individual. Note the license plate of their car if they have one. Basic physical description, approximate height, clothing, distinguishing features. Third, communicate. Talk to other parents at the location. Talk to security guards if there are any. Notify the school administration. Create a network of collective attention. And fourth, if you feel safe doing so, confront them directly. Go up to the person and ask, "Can I help you? Are you looking for someone specific?" Often, just being noticed and questioned already scares the predator away because they lose the invisibility that is essential for their plan to work. Always remember this. He's counting on you to do nothing, so do something, anything, because hesitation can cost a life. And to illustrate exactly how far this can go, there's another case that needs to be told. Between 2002 and 2004 in Cleveland, Ohio, 3 women disappeared under separate but strangely similar circumstances. Michelle Knight, 21 years old, Amanda Berry, 16 years old, Gina DeJesus, 14 years old. 3 lives that vanished, as if the earth had opened up and swallowed them. The families did everything they could. Posters, vigils, media campaigns, pressure on the police. But the years passed and nothing. No concrete clues, no bodies, no answers. Until May 2013, when Amanda Berry managed to scream for help through a partially open door, and a neighbor heard. When the police raided that house on Seymour Avenue, they found the 3 women alive. They had spent an entire decade in captivity, 10 years, in Ariel Castro's house, on an absolutely ordinary residential street, with neighbors on both sides, cars passing by, children playing on the sidewalk. But there's a detail in this case that many people don't know, and that makes everything even more disturbing. Ariel Castro knew 2 of the victims. Gina DeJesus was a friend of his daughter. She had been to his house before in completely normal situations, to play with her friend. He had seen Amanda Berry repeatedly in the neighborhood, knew her routine, knew where she worked part-time. He didn't pick up random strangers off the street in a fit of madness. He observed them. He studied their routines. He identified vulnerabilities. He waited for the perfect opportunities, moments when each of them was alone, where their absence wouldn't be immediately noticed, where he could act without witnesses. When they were finally found in 2013 and the full story came to light, the whole world was shocked. How could someone keep 3 women captive for a decade without anyone noticing? How did the neighbors not see anything? How did the police not find anything? But the brutal truth is, Castro meticulously studied them before kidnapping them. He planned every approach, and he acted at the exact moments when he knew no one would immediately notice their absence. Michelle was in a socially vulnerable situation. Amanda was returning from work. Gina was walking back from school. He knew the patterns. He exploited the loopholes. Ariel Castro hanged himself, in prison just weeks after his conviction, avoiding decades of jail time and denying his victims any chance to confront him again. But the scars he left, physical, psychological, emotional, will last forever. Michelle, Amanda, and Gina had to rebuild their entire lives after a decade of being robbed, and it all began exactly the same way as the other cases, with surveillance, with calculated patience, with a man who learned to be invisible while he watched, planned, and waited. And this leads us to the most important conclusion of everything we've discussed so far. So let's close this circle with the most important truth of all. The kidnapper who studies the victim for weeks is not a monster from a horror movie. He doesn't look like a psychopath. He doesn't wear a mask or carry a knife. He's the neighbor who waves to you in the morning, the guy sitting on the park bench reading the newspaper, the man in the white van parked on the corner. He seems completely normal because he spent years training to look normal. He knows when to smile. He knows how to make eye contact without seeming threatening. He knows how to dress discreetly. He knows how to maintain superficial conversations that don't raise any red flags. His normality is a conscious construct, a perfectly tailored social mask. But now you know what to look for behind that mask. You know how he thinks during the surveillance process. You understand that progressive dehumanization, reinforced fantasy, and desensitization to risk are the three mental pillars that underpin his behavior. You know that surveillance is the first stage of any planned kidnapping, and that interrupting this initial phase can literally save a life before the crime happens. Knowledge is not just power. Knowledge is prevention. It's the difference between being just another statistic and being the person who prevented a tragedy. And here is the most brutal and liberating truth at the same time. Most of these crimes we studied today could have been prevented if a single person had noticed the pattern, if a single person had acted on instinct, if a single person had trusted that nagging feeling in their stomach and done something about it. J.C. Dugard, Sean Hornbeck, Amanda Berry, Gina DeJesus, Michelle Knight, all these lives could have had completely different fates if someone, at some point during the weeks of surveillance, had broken through the predator's invisibility. So don't be one of those who ignores the strange man because you don't want to seem paranoid. Be the one who questions, the one who documents, the one who acts. Be inconvenient if necessary. Be the annoying adult who asks too many questions, because while you're sitting there thinking, this will never happen to me or this will never happen in my neighborhood, there's someone out there at this very moment sitting on a park bench, watching a child, noting schedules, memorizing routines, planning, waiting for the perfect moment. And the only thing between that predator and yet another victim might be you deciding to trust your instincts and do something about it. So the question remains, will you be that person? If you've made it this far, I know you're not the type of person who watches superficial content just to pass the time. You want to truly understand how these minds work. You want real tools to protect those you love. And that's exactly why this channel exists. So if this kind of approach makes sense to you, no sensationalism, no romanticizing criminals, just raw and didactic analysis, subscribe now. Because with each video, we delve another level into the psychology of crime. And do me a favor, leave a comment saying, I stayed until the end, so I know this format is working, that you really want to continue exploring these topics with me. This really helps me understand what you want to see here. Leave a like too, because the more people this content reaches, the more people will have access to information that can save lives. It's that simple. And look, there's a video right here that perfectly complements this topic. We're going to delve into the minds of predators who use psychological manipulation instead of physical force. Click and continue watching. Thanks for watching. Until next time.